and welcome to our Later Life podcast. I'm Vicki Lamb. I'm the Individual Giving Manager for Age UK Lancashire, and we also have Anne Oliver. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Vicki. Yes, my name is Anne Oliver and I'm the Community Engagement and Project Manager for Age UK Lancashire. And happy to have a chat with you, Vicki.
Thank you very much. So today what we're going to be talking about is later life planning. And this involves looking at how we can plan for our later life, and especially at a time when we might not be here. So that will include power of attorneys and looking at having a will and making sure your will is updated as well. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about these and how having these do make a difference and how they can help not only yourself but also your family as well. So Anne, do you want to talk us about why it's important about planning for later life?
Absolutely. In the years that I've worked with Age UK Lancashire and in my personal life, I've come to become more and more passionate about ensuring that people do plan for their later life and have their paperwork in order. At the end of the day, we have our car insurance, we have our house insurance, but people do shy away from writing a will and thinking about the other practicalities of life, which might include having powers of attorney, which I'll explain later for those that aren't aware of perhaps of what one is and what it entails. But dear Benjamin Franklin is actually the first person to be credited as saying that actually nothing in the world is certain except death and taxes. And so, you know, whilst people do shy away from the topic, I think it's really important that we talk about it in a free, frank and open manner and take out a lot of the emotion that might be around it. And when we look at writing a will or a power of attorney, in a way, what we're doing is helping ourselves to plan for our own later life, thinking about what we want, whether it's our care, how we want that care to be planned and managed for us if we can't tell people ourselves at some stage. But also in terms of a will, it means that, you know, we've thought about what we want to happen to our estate, to our personal possessions. Some people will tell me, I've got no money, it really doesn't matter. But you might not have money, but you might have wedding rings and jewellery and, you know, other, you know, important gifts that you want to ensure go to the right person. So it's about having a think about what you want, and also it gives an opportunity to think possibly about how, you know, whether we want a cremation, whether we want to be buried after our time on earth. And by using a will, this is a way as well of being able to give instructions to family members as well about what we want at a time when actually families often desperately do need to have that information so they know they've done best for their parent. So it's about being practical and actually being kind to those that you're leaving behind with actually what is the workload afterwards. So don't shy away from it, just get on with it.
That's spot on actually. Is you know, the message today is don't delay, because we never know what's going to happen and we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So yeah, that is going to be our message for today is you know, please do make time for it. So let's have a chat about having a will and explaining what wills are and the benefits of having a will as well.
Thanks, Vicki. Yes, having a will is really our opportunity to express our wishes as to what happens to our property possessions after our lifetime. And by having a will, we're giving clear instructions as to what happens with that. And then it makes sure that, you know, our wishes are carried out. And a will doesn't have to take a long time to create, and it certainly doesn't have to be expensive to do. There are different options. We can buy will packs in supermarkets. We can go online. There's a website called Bequeathed where actually you can create a will free of charge, which will be checked on your behalf by a solicitor free of charge. You can go to your own solicitor and prepare a will with them, Or you can use Age UK Lancashire's will writing service. We run regular will writing clinics across the county, and details are on our website about that. None of those options are expensive at all. They just need a little bit of thinking in advance as to what you want to do with them. But a will can be used for so many different reasons. Firstly, of course, to make sure that our property possessions go to the people that we want them to, but also we can cover issues such as guardianship if younger children are involved. It can also be used to set up trust funds for minors or for people with disabilities, so that ensures that that money is bubble wrapped and ring fenced for them in later life. Again, we can use it for recording our funeral wishes, and equally you could just put a letter in with your will, with your funeral wishes. But do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to have a religious service or a non-religious service? What sort of a wake do you want? Do you want a very private ceremony, or do you want to put £1,000 behind the bar for everybody to have a right good time? Everybody's ideas are very different. And so it really is the first thing often that families look for a will after death, is to find out if any funeral arrangements were in that, because people shy away from talking about it. So a will gives all of those options. But equally, nowadays we have an awful lot of people with what we call blended families, or quite complicated families. People may have been widowed, remarried, divorced, remarried. There may be stepchildren and half children. Families are quite complicated nowadays, and I think it's all the more reason why people should have a will, just to make sure that there's no misunderstandings and no fights, and that executors appointed who get on with each other. Sisters tell me that that's crucial, and that can handle the affairs, after your death. So there's a multitude of reasons for having a will. It's also very useful to use for tax planning. If you're likely to have a tax liability after death, you can write legacies into your wills, and you can do those at any stage to give gifts to individuals, to people who might have helped you, to friends, or to charities. And Age UK Lancashire actually depends a lot for our services on the kindness of people after their death. So it can be used as a tax planning tool, because any monies that's left to charities reduces the tax burden if you are in the inheritance tax category, and a solicitor would talk you through that. So a will is a real bubble wrapping, real catch-all to help make sure that your money and your property goes where you want it to. It can help reduce tax burdens, and it can really help prevent a lot of animosity, friction, concerns within families after the event. So we've all seen it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a will, laws of intestacy will come into play. If you have a spouse and no children, then the money would pass straight to the spouse, but the situation can become quite complicated depending on family structures. So it is a very simple solution to make sure that your wishes are respected after death, and it can become really quite difficult, particularly if people do have complicated families after death, if there isn't a will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to share a story that I've heard as well, from a couple who were not married. They lived together for about 25 years. And unfortunately, the gentleman passed away unexpectedly. And so it obviously, it's quite an upsetting time, because it's, this lady has lost her partner of 25 years. Now, because they didn't have a will, the estate actually went to the gentleman's brothers and sisters, and they've sold the house. And unfortunately, that's left this lady in a position where she's now having to live with her parents, because she's got nowhere to live. And that is the case, because if they'd had a will, it would have been that, the estate would have gone to the partner should one of them pass away. And it's a really upsetting case, and we hear about it all the time, whereby people aren't getting married as much anymore. But those securities are not in place, and it's just that security of having it in place of, you know, if something is to happen, you're still protected. You've still got somewhere to live. You've there's the finances as well to help keep you supported, to pay those bills. So it is really, really important. And as you said, it doesn't take long at all. It takes a maximum of half an hour at most for a basic will to be written. So please do really consider it.
And your story is not uncommon. I think, you know, there's a misconception that if you aren't married, that you will be treated as a spouse, and it isn't. The laws of testacy, if sometimes it happens with children, that the person dies, and because there's no will, the estate goes to their children because they'd be first in line for intestacy laws, or even more concerning for some people, to an ex-wife.
Yeah,
because if the will hadn't been, if there'd been a will from a previous marriage, that would be taken into consideration. That would be the only will. And so it's really important as well that if people do review the wills, and we advise people to review wills every 5 years, that certainly in the cases of divorce and remarriage, etc., that you do, as a matter of immediacy, revisit your will, because you certainly want to make sure that the money goes where you want it to go.
yeah.
So yeah, we hear
absolutely.
these stories all the time, and it can really destroy people's livelihoods and futures at a time when they're in the most distressed state.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Anne, about that. And as Anne mentioned, our will writing services are on our website, so please do take a look if that is something that you're interested in. So we'll now move on to power of attorney and what power of attorneys are, and how they can support you from today, for example, all the way through to the end of life.
Lovely. Thanks, Vicky. Yes, power of attorney is a little bit like an insurance policy. It's something that you would draw up, put in your drawer alongside your house and car insurance, and actually hope that you never need it. And some people never do have to use their powers of attorney. What are powers of attorney? There are two types of power of attorney. There are power of attorney that covers your possessions and property, so health, and the second one is for health and well-being. So property and finance, health and well-being, two different ones. Some people say that one is more important than the other. If you speak to a banker, they'd probably say finance. If you speak to a doctor, they'd probably say health and well-being. From my experience of working with people in powers of attorney over the years, I would say, and being power of attorney myself and my parents, I would say that both are equally important. So what are they? If you're writing a power of attorney, you are the donor. The person that you act on your behalf, or people, are the attorneys. First and foremost, they are paper. It's a legal document which is logged with the Office of the Public Guardian, which actually means that in case of welfare, if you lose the capacity to tell doctors, nurses, care providers what you want from your care, the power of attorney acts as if they are speaking your words. So you're acting in the best interests of that person. With the and that power of attorney is only able to be used at a time when you haven't got the capacity to speak for yourself. So that might actually come in and out in certain circumstances, but most often in the case of somebody possibly with dementia, it's when they get to that stage when they can't speak for themselves and tell people what they want coherently. In terms of property and finance, actually the attorney can act on your behalf as soon as the power of attorney has been registered. However, if you choose, you can set it up so that, like the health and well-being, it can only be used when you haven't got the capacity to act for yourself. It is actually most sensible to do it so that you can work together once it's been set up. So it means that you can actually help maybe elderly parents with their finances, from the start. You're not taking over from them, you're helping them, and then you can increase that support as you need it. So these are ways of helping to support people at later in life when It could be earlier. I mean, some people may fall into a coma, they may have a car crash, they may have an accident and need that support earlier in life. Who would you choose and how many people can you have as attorneys? And that is entirely up to you. You can have one person to act as your attorney, and you could have the same person to act as attorney for both powers of attorney. Or you could have two different people. If, for example, you have two children and one is more financially savvy and the other one has more of a caring type of personality, you could choose to have the two separate people to be your attorneys for those. But they could also act jointly together, or we can set it up so that it's jointly and severally. So actually one person can make the decision in each case if two people are nominated, or you can make the decisions together. You can have three people. You can choose yourself who your power of the attorneys are. But what I would say is that make sure that you choose people who you trust to act in your best interest, because that's what they're doing. And as with wills and executors, have powers of attorney if you're having multiples that get on with each other. So don't necessarily, if you have three children, don't necessarily appoint them all as powers of attorney for you if they hate each other's guts. And let's face it, not all siblings get on with each other. So please choose who you have. And some people struggle to think who they should appoint. Now, in the normal scheme of things, people would appoint the spouse as the first attorney if that person, isn't suffering from frailty already themselves. So what you can do is have a two-level approach. So you could appoint your spouse as your first power of attorney, but in the eventuality that they couldn't act on your behalf, it would then drop down to the children or the second level of attorneys, and it saves you having to redo the whole process. So think about who you want and the fact that they're asking your best interest. And how do you go about writing your power of attorney is the question people ask. Oh, my solicitor's going to charge me hundreds and hundreds of pounds to do this. Now, as with wills, you have choice. You can either go onto the gov.uk website and you can download, print off the form and complete it as you would a passport application form, for example, fill it in, and then you sign it in the presence of somebody who has known you for a minimum of 2 years. So again, it's just like a passport. It doesn't have to be a solicitor or a doctor. It has to be somebody that can vouch that you had the capacity to make the decision as to who you made your attorneys. And then they have to be witnessed as well. The signatures of the attorneys have to be on the form as well. The forms are then submitted to the Office of the Public Guardian. There is a charge for that. It's £82 currently. If people are on benefits, particular benefits, that can be reduced to £16 and sometimes even less. At the moment, there's a 20-week waiting list for powers of attorney to be processed, and so things need to be done as soon as people can, especially if there is a possibility that people are losing their capacity somewhat. Again, it's one of these things that people put off, and sometimes until it's too late, and that can become very, very difficult for families if the powers are in place. And sometimes, as you were saying before, we have instances in families where it can be very difficult. We had an instance where a sister and brother lived together. The brother controlled all the finances in the house. The sister had no bank account in her own right or anything. The brother had a stroke, he lost capacity, and she had access to no funding, no finances in the house at all. And so that was a really, really difficult situation for her to find herself in and to be resolved. So again, as with wills, we look on it as a kindness to those people who will be handling your affairs for you when you can't. So by setting them up when you don't need them, it means, again, you can write them, make sure that people know that they've been made your power of attorney, put in a drawer and forgotten about until such time as it might be needed, and it might never be. But I think that there are instances where it can be very difficult for families if they don't have them, and you can't apply to the courts for a power of attorney for health and well-being after somebody has lost capacity, except in very specific circumstances. For the property and finance, you can, but you have to go to the Office of the Public Guardian. You have to apply. It's very, very costly to do so. It can take a very long time to go through. You might not be appointed as the power of attorney, social services might be. And if you are made the power of attorney, if you are appointed, you then have to regularly submit accounts to the Office of the Public Guardian to show that you are handling those affairs correctly. Whereas if you've been made power of attorney, before the person loses capacity, you do not have to show any accounts, prove anything that you've done on behalf of the person financially. You don't have to show that to anybody at all. You might choose to share it with other family members, but you're not legally required to do so. So it really is a lot simpler to do it when you don't need it rather than when you desperately do, is the message.
Yep, and that's great, Anne, thank you so much. So yes, it is, following on from what Anne has said, it is really, really important to get these things in place as soon as possible, and especially if there is that long wait, as Anne has just mentioned, which was 20 weeks. Having it, like she said, having it written, having it done and sorted, and you can just leave it in your drawers so that if and when you need it, it's there. So please do think about it. There will be organisations that will help you with the power of attorney, but it is fairly straightforward. So please do just set some time aside to write those with your partner and with your children and your attorneys as well. And the same goes for writing your will or even updating your will. Please do just take the time just to revisit it or start thinking about it. We do have information booklets at Age UK Lancashire, so please do contact us if you want any booklets on any of the topics we've discussed. We do have a live book, and it's just showing that on screen now, and the live book is a really, really good book to have at home. It has all the details, personal details, it has all the documents that you might have, where things are, and of course, even as we enter a digital age, you might want to think about making sure people have access to your digital accounts as well, and that's something that we're starting to see more of, are the digital assets. So please do ask us about the live book, and please do come to us for advice in terms of will writing, powers of attorney, because we have booklets on those that might help you as well.
Lovely, thank you very much. Just one final note. We do have people saying to us, we haven't got anybody to make our power of attorney that we can think of. We haven't got any family remaining. We don't really have any close friends. Who do we turn to? And I think then people should speak to a solicitor and their bank, because you can nominate professional organisations to act on your behalf if you can't. There will always be a charge if a solicitor's acting as your power of attorney. There will invariably be a charge, and it's very, very important then that you give them very specific instructions as to what your care wishes are as you go forward. Absolutely. Or what your financial wishes are if you're dealing with a solicitor or via your bank. So those organisations will act on your behalf, and I just thought it was worth mentioning that, because I do deal with a lot of people, meet a lot of people in the course of my work who say, we haven't done power of attorney because we absolutely don't know who to turn to.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's worth mentioning there is always a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anne. So I think that kind of rounds up everything about later life planning. Please do have a look at our website for lots of information. There's plenty of services that we offer, and so please do have a look at our website. And you can also sign up to our newsletter as well, which you can do online. And the newsletters that come out quite regularly now will have all the information and support that you might need.
And if anybody's rather younger and reading this podcast and thinking about their own retirement, for example, we run retirement planning workshops as Age UK Lancashire. And as part of the workshops, we cover some of these issues. We also talk about trust funds, financial planning, pensions, and all these issues actually do roll somewhat into one. And so if anybody is interested in thinking about more about later life planning, has more, would like more information, you could see our retirement planning pages as well on the website.
That's perfect, thank you. Wonderful, thank you very much, Anne. I hope you've all enjoyed the Later Life Planning podcast. Please do share this with family and friends wherever possible, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you.
And I will hopefully see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.